Intimacy Anorexia, Characteristics, Resources. I'm Dr. Doug Weiss, and we're going to talk about Intimacy Anorexia. Now, if you're not on our YouTube channel, please subscribe below and click the button so you can get all of our YouTubes. There's lots of stuff that can help you. So please do that, and we'll be right back. Intimacy Anorexia, Characteristics and some resource. If you're watching this, you might feel married and alone. You might be the person who's struggling with intimacy anorexia. You might have been in a support group or a counselor meeting and you heard the term intimacy anorexia and you want to know, what is that? Well, I'm Dr. Doug Weiss, and I'm the person who coined that phrase and trained counselors all across the world. So I want to share with you what the characteristics of intimacy anorexia, but before I do, let's define it. Intimacy anorexia is the active withholding of emotional, spiritual, and sexual intimacy from your spouse or significant other. It usually shows up only in that relationship. Everyone else thinks the intimacy anorexic is a wonderful man or woman and going about life happy. But at home, the other person feels alone, rejected, unwanted, and can't figure out why we can't get our relationship to feel like a romance, feel like lovers. It feels so functional, so dry, so mechanical, so empty. So here's the characteristics. I'm going to explain each one. And at the end, keep track of that. And in the middle of this discussion, I'm going to let you know there's lots of hope. I've seen thousands of men and women and couples who are both intimacy anorexics get well. Some of them haven't had sex in 10, 20 years, and they are having a great sex life and a great relationship. And you deserve to be one of those couples if you do the work. But let's find out what it is first. The first characteristic is busy. Being so busy, you have little time just for your spouse. Now, busy can be athletic activities, it can be community, political, spiritual things you do, but it can also be just sitting on Facebook for hours, or watching TV for hours, or being addicted to the news, or just cleaning the house all the time when your spouse is home. And so busy just feels like the other person's always distracted, and we don't make special occasions, special dates. Sometimes birthdays and holidays go missed. Busy. Blame. Blame is critical to intimacy anorexia because the intimacy anorexic operates kind of more in an object relationship than relationship. And so they need you to be responsible for all the bad so that they can be good. So they blame you for all the problems in a relationship. Even if it's legitimately not your fault, somehow it's your fault. It comes back to you. Well, if you wouldn't have done X, I wouldn't have acted like Y. So if you feel like you're being blamed in the relationship and you don't really feel like the person ever really says, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, it's my responsibility, forgive me, without being coerced, having pictures, being pushed into it, you're probably living with an intimacy anorexic because it's hard for them to see their flaws and believe that they're lovable. Withholding love. Now, this is very specific to you because I've had men and women married 2 or 3 times and they had different strategies for each spouse because that's how that person received love. So however you like to receive love, whether it's getting coffee in the morning, having the house clean, having a gift given to you, touch, quality time, whatever your specific way of receiving love, that's where they will withhold. It's intentional, and they'll withhold it from you, or they'll make you pay if you get it. And so they withhold love from you. And you know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a spouse. It's like I tell you what I need, and that's exactly what you won't do. And that's a male or a female, because intimacy anorexia comes in both genders, and it doesn't have a preference for socioeconomic, race, religion, nothing. Like any addiction, it's across all lines. But they'll withhold love from you, and you will feel unloved. You will feel unromanced. You will feel unconnected to, and even maybe like an emptiness, like something's missing in your life. They withhold praise. Now, they might praise you publicly because that makes them look good. But when you're home alone, they don't look you in the eye and go, you're an amazing man. You're an amazing woman. I love this about you. I enjoy this about you. Your private moments are empty of praise. The time in the house, just being around each other, is empty of praise. Even when you're doing well, I've had men and women get master's and doctorate degrees, or get another X amount of money on their job. There was absolutely no acknowledgement, no celebration. So withholding praise, withholding spiritually, because I've worked with every faith, from every age, every gender, from almost every continent all over the world. Spirituality has many manifestations, but regardless of that, they won't connect with you spiritually. They might be a pastor, a rabbi, a medicine man, or a woman who's a pastor in a church, but they won't pray with you. They won't connect with you. They won't get into spiritual issues with you, even though they might be spiritual leaders in the community. They might be a bishop or a Sunday school teacher or some other version of spiritual leadership. But with you, it's not a part of the relationship. And they might even get angry if you try to make it part of the relationship. Sex, withholding sex. Now this shows up in several different ways. Of course, there's the obvious. We're not having sex. Okay, it can be weeks, months, years, or decades. And there's always an excuse. They withhold initiation of sex. They won't initiate. They'll let you have sex, but they won't initiate sex. That's withholding. They disconnect during sex, okay? Whether it's a woman who's thinking about what else she needs to do this day or just get it over with, or if it's a man who's in fantasy or pornography in his brain while his wife is being present with him or trying to be present with him, but they're disassociated. That's another way of withholding sex. So it's possible to have sex 2 or 3 times a week and still be disconnected sexually. And if you're in that situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It feels more alone after sex than before. You feel empty and used and disconnected, and it is a negative reinforcement for you, which makes you not want to have sex, which makes a whole dynamic really get complex. Now there's hope, okay, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. But if they're withholding sex from you in any of those formats, you're feeling pain, you're feeling unpursued, you're feeling unwanted. And again, this pain goes on and on and on and on and on. Let me talk about that for a minute. There's hope here. There's lots of resources. For the Intimacy Anorexic, there's the book, the DVD, the workbook, step books. There's phone groups, there's intensives where you fly here to Colorado Springs with me or one of the staff that's been trained by me, and you can get a lot done in those intensives. There are groups you can be part of. There's also Facebook groups. There's a Facebook group for Intimacy Anorexics. There's a Facebook group for spouses who are women and spouses who are men. And you're not going to get a lot of support in your local community. So I would definitely get some help. And if you're the spouse, we have Married and Alone, the DVD and book. We have a DVD called Pain for Love, which can be really, really helpful for you to understand the dynamic you're living with. We have the Married and Alone workbook, same thing, groups, intensives. Even if you're divorced, the trauma of this is huge. And I highly recommend, we have a DVD called Partner Betrayal Trauma. Interesting research. 3 populations, those married to sex addicts, those married to intimacy anorexics, and those who've experienced infidelity. And you would think over the various scales that we measured, they'd be different, but they weren't. Someone who's married to an intimacy anorexic has exactly the same kind of trauma, and I mean trauma, in several domains as anyone who's been cheated on or anyone who's married to a sex addict. So if you are in a situation with intimacy anorexia, definitely recommend the Partner Betrayal Trauma DVD to explain what the spouse is going through statistically. For over 30 years, I've seen men and women and couples restore and live happily ever after, but they have to do the work. If someone does not want to love you, there's nothing anybody can do. Even God himself cannot help that person because they don't want help. But if they want help and they don't want to be stuck and they want a different relationship, there is a known path, known tools, and known processes to get those results. Now let me go back to the characteristics because we weren't finished. Feelings. Unwilling or unable to share feelings with you. They might do it with their friend, they might do it at the bar, they might do it at church, they might do it in some other location. But with you, they're not, this is how I feel. Now I'm not talking about feelings just about you, because those are usually going to be negative. I'm talking about feelings just about life. Feeling excited, feeling engaged, feeling fulfilled. You don't hear these toward you or with you. That's important. Criticism takes on 2 forms. Ongoing, so it's like this kind of picking criticism, and ungrounded. It's like they're criticizing you for something they made up in their head. We call that the negative narrative. And then they treat you as if you actually feel, think, and believe what they're projecting onto you. And it gets really crazy because you feel like you're in an argument with no ability to be heard. And that criticism goes on and on and on. And you can't seem to perform your way out of it, be heard your way out of it. It's just you're guilty and guilty and guilty. So if you're experiencing that, you also could be living with an intimacy anorexic. Now, the next one is anger and silence. They'll use either strategy as a way to control. If they feel attacked or unsafe or they want to punish you, they can burst out in anger and rage, okay? And that pushes you away. Or they can just totally shut down. And literally, I've had clients for weeks sleep in the same bed, live in the same house, and not say a word to each other because the anorexic was punishing the spouse. And if you've been through that, that's traumatic and it's abusive and it's unkind. But they don't know how to process what's going on with them. And so they punish you to get you never to say that again, or never talk about sex, or never talk about money, or never talk about their flaw, whatever that flaw was. The next one is money. Now this one I can tell you, generally speaking, is the lowest one, but it also is one that when it is used really aggressively. And it has two formats. One is the controlling of money, where you don't get to spend unless you kind of ask permission, or you have a certain account to just spend for groceries or things like that. But it's limited, you have no say in finances, and they control it. The other is they control through abundance. I buy you everything. I take you on great vacations. I do crazy things financially. You're wearing a $30,000 ring. How can you ask for love, sex, intimacy, or anything else from me? Because I give you everything. And so they control by abundance. And either way, they're using money as a way to control in the relationship. Now, the last one is a characteristic kind of developed as we went along, and that is feeling like a roommate. If you feel like a roommate, I've had at least 1,000 men and women tell me, Dr. Weiss, I feel like a roommate. I feel like I have a friend. I feel like I have a house partner. I feel like I have a buddy who I can hike with or do something with and doesn't mind the photo ops, but it's empty, alone. And actually a roommate would treat me nicer because they would treat me with respect. I wouldn't go through the punishing and the withholding sex and not touching me and not connecting to me. So if you've been watching this, and this sounds like your situation, first I want to say there's hope if the person wants to get better. But if they don't want to get better, it's kind of like alcoholism. If the alcoholic doesn't want to get better, then you have to decide to get better yourself. We have married and alone materials and groups and stuff you can do. You can get support, you can be understood, and you can be validated that your pain and trauma are legitimate. Either way, and if you both want to get better, I really encourage you to do that. I love seeing intimacy anorexics heal. I love getting those follow-up phone calls from intensives. Dr. Weiss, what did you do to my spouse? It's a miracle. I heard that just yesterday as I was doing a follow-up call with someone who did intensive. Dr. Weiss, it's a miracle. We love each other. We like each other. We're having sex. We feel playful again. I feel like they have my back. Like, what did you do? I said, no, you did it. I gave you the tools and the principles and the things you need to do to walk it out, but you did the work. And that's the thing. If you or your spouse and you are both of you together, do the work. This could end well. But if they choose not to, then it's going to be more of the same and it might even get worse. So I'm Dr. Doug Weiss. I really want you to have this information. Everyone knows a couple like this. Share this information. And please take your next step.